So the lures have all been painted, one coat. This is a very important coat. This is a sealer coat. So one of the things that you look for after the first coat, because you need 2 coats of paint on top of any filler. So really this should be your last crack at filling stuff. So there's going to be a total of 3 coats. It's had 1. You're going to fill in anything that you missed and sand it off, paint it. That's 1 coat. That'll be the second coat, and then the third coat will be the final coat. And hopefully there's no repairs after the second coat. But if you look at it and feel it, it's very, very rough. And of course, this is in fact a sealer coat, and any little tendrils of wood that are not nailed down, they get frozen by the paint. And this is a good time to check the holes as well, the lead holes. And you can see here that those lead holes are not totally covered. So to make them absolutely invisible, I'm going to have to put another layer on here. And one of the things you do is you always check the glue lines. Now this one is actually really good. I have another one here that you can see the glue line now. You have to ask yourself, is that an outie or an innie? So innie being a depression, outie being a glue line that has gotten raised. So again, I look all over the lure. Again, I see little things that I missed on the lead holes. So here's one of the 7 inches that had a gap, and I've already filled it just to show you how you fill in those glue lines. And again, I had a few little spots here over the lead holes that weren't totally covered. So here are the poppers after the first coat of paint and the first repairing that I've done. So bear in mind again that the white paint shows all problems. They just glare. And you may remember on the previous video here, there were some markings around these lead holes, and I had to put in more filling. And all of this work was done with little pieces of sandpaper, 220. You don't need to go any higher. And I wanted to make sure you saw that sometimes you actually do sand through the first layer, but you've got 2 layers coming, 2 more layers. And right along here, you may remember there was a mark from the glue line, and I'm not sure if the camera can catch. There's a little bit of light tan colored filler that is now inside there. Again, there were voids around some of the holes, the lead holes. Some of the removal can be quite drastic, because if this lure had a small indent all the way along that glue line, and in sanding out the added filler, I took off a lot of the paint. But this you'll never see, I guarantee it. After 2 more coats, this will be absolutely fabulous. All of these lead holes will be invisible. You will never ever be able to find out where they are. These lures have all had 3 coats now, and after the first coat, which is of course very much a primary sealer coat, the following coats make the lure just smoother and smoother, and after the first coat, just prior to the second coat, you can go up to something like 400 grit, and very light sanding around the head. And prior to the final coat, you can use again 400, but just a very light, just to get off any little lumps and bumps. Now remember, I promised you that these holes, these lead holes, would be almost invisible. Well, this one, if you look just right with the light, you might be able to see them. This one, however, although there's no dents or indentations in it, you can see the shadow of the lead hole. So I think I'm going to give this guy one more coat. The two smaller ones, man, they are absolutely invisible. You can run your hand along it, you can't feel anything. So the next step, we're going to be adding this silvery coating and making scales, and that's kind of when the lure starts to look more and more like a fishing lure. And this tape that you use is interesting stuff because it's extremely soft, and when you put it on, then you can put indentations in it that pretty much simulate scales. I think they look really good. Very common to use this kind of scale. Lots of people do that on the YouTube. We are now ready to put on the aluminum. So this sample shows that the aluminum is kind of cut along the belly and along the back, as shown here. And I've got one that I've done previously. This shows probably even easier to see a sample of what we're trying to accomplish. So we've got some opportunities here, or some challenges around the gills and around this face. So this face angles in many different directions, where this part of the lure, the main body of the lure, is relatively consistent. I'm going to try to go along the entire body and the face, but the tape does not necessarily like to go along these angles. So in this one here, you can actually see the split here, and I did this piece here separately than this piece here. So I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. So this is the tape. This is an aluminum tape. This is not your duct tape. This is aluminum tape. They usually use it on HVAC stuff, and it's paper backed and it's very soft. So one of the things you want to be is very careful with this roll. If you were to drop this roll costs about $22 Canadian. If you were to drop this roll and put a big dent in the side, you may have just wasted $22. So you want to be very careful with this roll. So let's start. First thing you do is you cut off a generous amount. Don't go shy. And again, putting your tape away safely. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the backer off, and you're going to line it up, and then you're going to push it down in the center and start to work it. So what I normally do to get this paper off of the tape is I cut it at an angle, and then I try and get that paper to pop up the tip of the tip of a knife. Sometimes it comes up right away, sometimes it doesn't. So here it has come up, and what you want to do is you want to get that paper loosened all the way across. Now I'm gonna put this lure this way just because it's easier for me to work with. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that paper almost all the way off. Do not take it all the way off. If you do, what happens, this end here starts to flop around, and I'll tell you, this stuff has an absolute mind of its own. If you let that go, it takes off on you, and you start over again. Okay, so you put it down in the center and work it all the way forward. Now what you can do, of course, is you can cut off the pieces that you don't need. So the end is kind of like right here, so I'm going to cut off a little bit here. And I'm going to cut off a bit up here. So then you start to work it with your thumbs. Now, as you start to take this tape, which is kind of a 2D, like it's got length and width, but it doesn't have a lot of depth, very, very thin. You can hear it crinkling. You hear that crinkle? So that's telling you something. That's telling you you're doing things to it that it doesn't like. So what's going to happen here is as we go around these corners, you're going to get crinkled. And you can see the crinkles starting to form here. And then we're going to have to do something with those crinkles. Hopefully we can get rid of most of them. See how I'm working those little crinkles out of here? Now you can feel that this tape is in extreme tension right here, and one of the things I use to work some of these crinkles out is this plastic pen. It's a pilot pen, and because this bottom is quite soft, you can actually work some of these crinkles out of it. So there's no way that I can get this. It's so much in tension. I can't get it around without making a kind of a mess. So it's pretty obvious to me that I am going to have to cut a piece of this out and replace it with another piece. And the second piece will be under far less stress and will work very nicely. Very, very similar to what this one worked out. You can see the split here. Now you keep looking for little creases and you just try and get the bubbles out. Some of the areas that always have problems are like around the end here, and you know, all you can do is do the best you can, and you'll get many of the little bulges and crinkles and air pockets out of there. Now I've taken a fairly long piece of this 1/16th tape, and I'm just going to lay it out where I think it should go. So I get a chance to change this tape whenever I think it's not where I want. Okay, so now I'm ready to cut. I usually use a brand new razor blade in my scalpel when I'm trying to do this, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut along the right hand side of this tape, and I have to press in and actually into the wood. This aluminum tape is actually quite tough, and after I get it scored, then I'm going to try and peel this off. If I haven't cut deep enough, it will tear. So you got to kind of grip real hard and then push down. Try not to cut the tape. Not a sin if you do, but I like to use my tape over and over again, and usually what I'll do is I'll do this for a number of lures at a time. This is probably a potentially dangerous thing, so you want to make sure you've got a good grip of the scalpel and you've got it under control. Alright, now let's see if we can peel this off. Sometimes you have to cut a little bit backwards to get that thing to start to tear properly. Okay, so you can see it's tearing. Okay, so I'm glad that did that, and I'll show you why. You've got to pull to my left, which makes the tape follow the cut. Now you got a couple of little places here where it didn't follow the cut. And this was a cut that I put in the aluminum tape to do some stress relief. So the aluminum is surprisingly tough. So let's work at this one right here. Let's kind of poke that up. Now there could be a couple of problems. It may not have been cut deep enough, or it may have just torn away from the cut line. So you notice that one comes off really quite nice. All along here, it's following the cut. Now in this case I actually did cut the tape a tiny little bit. Okay, we can take our tape off now. So one of the things you need to do whenever you, oh sorry, I'm going to get this last little tiny bit here. Gotta be careful when you poke at it with your scalpel. You don't want to be poking at the paint and taking paint off. Okay, so now I've got all the little pieces off, and now I'm going to go back and I'm going to use that bottom end of that pan again, and there's a little ridge that comes up when you cut it. And depending on the light, you can see that ridge, and this burnishes that ridge out of there. Okay, so that actually has come out pretty good. This side will be a little bit more of a challenge. Now on this side of the cut there's going to be paint, and with any luck you won't be able to see the transition from the aluminum to the paint. The paint will actually cover up that transition. It doesn't always work, but it works about 90% of the time. Okay, so now I'm going to put the tape be a little careful when you're looking at this edge, because sometimes if you cut the tape will leave a little bit of green in it, or whatever color the tape is. So you got to be just aware that that might be there. And so then I use the same pen to kind of burnish that little edge, to burnish it down. So now that's the eye. We're not quite done yet. There's a couple other things. We got the tail. The tail is relatively easy to square off. Get it started and roll it over. This front face, however, is a little bit more problematic.